And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, CyberQ CTF, a hacker simulation experience. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenters today. We are joined by our partners from the EC Council, Senior Vice President Steve Graham and Executive Director of Research, Cyber Exercises, War Games, Tim Rosenberg. Steve and Tim, you now have the floor.
All right, thanks for the intro, Mayan, appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you're at. Really happy to have you on today's demo. What we're going to do is go through just quick intros, kind of give you an idea of what we're going to talk about, and then we're going to dive right into the live platform demo. So our intros will take about 5 minutes or so here just to kind of set the stage. So a little bit about today. So we're here to talk about CyberQ, capture the flag, looking at how we bring education technologies into the classroom to give people a more realistic hacking experience, make sure that they're prepared with the right skill sets. This is CyberQ itself is a brand new platform that was just launched to the market about a week ago. It's been in development for quite a bit longer than that, but it's brought to you by EC Council, which is a group that I work for. Under EC Council, if you've never heard that name, you may be familiar with the Certified Ethical Hacker. We're the certification body that created Certified Ethical Hacker. To give you a little bit of background, the EC Council New Horizons relationship, we've actually been partnered for nearly 20 years with New Horizons, providing cybersecurity curriculum and education to them. I actually got my start in education at New Horizons prior to joining EC Council, and had been introduced to the EC Council products and the Certified Ethical Hacker back in the early 2000s when I was a leader within the New Horizons network. So that'll take us to introductions. This is me here at the top. I'm Steve Graham. I'm the Senior Vice President for EC Council Global. I've been working for the EC Council for about 15 years now. I lead all of our education strategies, all of the ed tech design. Anytime we're using technology in the classroom, those are programs that roll up into me, and I kind of spearhead the different elements. CyberQ is one of the individual business units inside of EC Council where we focus very heavily on building advanced education technologies. The leader of that division is Tim Rosenberg. So Tim, if you want to take a second to introduce yourself, and then I'll steal the mic back.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is Tim Rosenberg. I joined EC Council just over 2 years ago and jumped head into building CyberQ, which is based on my last 20 some odd years of building war games and whatnot, and exercises and research labs and training facilities. Before joining EC Council, I was doing all of this over at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab for a couple of years, and before then, all points around the world. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, thanks for that, Tim. So when we originally set out to build CyberQ, our thought was we wanted to build a more advanced way for students to interact with cybersecurity curriculum, and we wanted to try and ease some of the burden on technology. It's not always easy to spin up a cyber range, to spin up the targets. Everything that goes into it, it's a pretty significant investment when you look at building out a cyber range, maintaining all of that equipment, maintaining cloud interactions, and making sure that we have high availability. So that's a lot of what's gone into the design of this program. But let's look at what CyberQ was really designed to do. What we want to do at EC Council is really reinvent the way that we approach cybersecurity education, training, practice, and assessment. So in each one of these areas, we focused on bringing education tools that will change the way that we approach skill development, knowledge development, identifying skill gaps, how we focus our time, how we bring intelligence into each one of those areas so that we can make educated decisions. So when we look at, in an education use case, how do we get students access to real targets, real operating systems, real threats, things that can exist in automated environments that they get their hands on right away in the classroom, and ensure that it's affordable. It doesn't cost $1 million to get into the platform. From training, looking at how do we handle the rapid development of skills or a curated development of skills where we can look at what are the skill gaps on individual knowledge, skills, and abilities that a user has, and then focus on individual training topics around where those gaps exist. And then that kind of takes us into practice. How do we practice cyber skills? Where a lot of InfoSec professionals are building their own range environments on their local machine. Usually they're fairly small form. It might be a single target or a set of a couple of targets. But it's pretty difficult to enhance your skills as you're building your own target environment. You need something that challenges you, that you don't really know what the answers are, and give them a lot of hands-on approach in that practice level. And then from assessment, This is one of the places where we look at, big data analytics and what's the type of information that we can pull out that's a bit richer than what's available in the market today. So for instance, if you look at a typical cyber competition that culminates in points or a winner, or you captured the flag in a certain amount of time, there's a lot more that we can do from a measurement perspective to start identifying how skillful an individual actually participated in something. So that includes things like full packet capture, intrusion detection systems, looking at, how much network traffic was generated along the way, as well as, time-based metrics of how long did it take you to either establish a hack inside of an environment or an exploit, or were you able to keep critical services up and running? So we take all of those analytics together and use that as a more comprehensive assessment metric to identify whether or not, as that user was going after a specific target or defending a target, whether they're red or blue, how did they actually behave and how skillfully did they do that? With those assessments, we can actually spin those up into more advanced benchmarking metrics, which we'll get into a little bit later. And you guys will see a live demo just momentarily. So with CyberQ, we approach the development of this as a platform. Don't think of it as a single kind of monolithic product that has one use case. It really is a platform. And we started at the start of our development, we were designing this specifically for EC Council content. Originally, this was to provide a greatly enhanced experience for the certified ethical hacker and computer hacking forensics investigator, and even some of our pen testing programs as well. But we realized the amount of work that was going into development and the way that we could pivot around how we built this into a platform, it made much more sense for us to open that up. So we actually developed CyberQ as an API-driven platform that you can think of it more like the AWS of cyber ranges. Our job is to provide the automation functions around each individual use case, make sure that we have reusable targets, we have a fully automated cloud environment, we have the analytics in a way that works, we map all of the knowledge elements and the flag elements into databases such as the nice NIST framework or individual job profiles, so that you can relate the information output into actual real world frameworks that are being used now to make decisions in government and military, as well as a lot of the enterprises. So as we look at these use cases, each individual person who uses CyberQ uses it for a different reason. So if I'm a student or a cyber professional, I'm really looking at how do I build my persistent digital profile, meaning how do I measure what skills I have, what are the skills that I need to work on, how do I figure where I'm at, and how do I access that content directly? From an educator perspective, as we start looking at curating that delivery and using some of the more advanced analytics, it comes down to teaching tech with tech and really having the feedback from the system to show, are my students actually grasping the content here? Can I dynamically spin up a program to help them work on a certain area where they may be weak? Inside of that SMB to enterprise space, there's additional use cases, again, as it's a platform where we look at the intelligence level that we're able to bring to a business leader or an HR manager, whether it's around hiring for a cyber role, seeing if they're capable of actually defending a system that's under attack, if it's identifying indicators of compromise in the middle of an assessment, or if it's just analyzing individual skills and abilities that are based on a specific job role. We can actually use that as a hiring screening tool, where instead of asking you to do you know how to do something, put them up against a real cyber attack, and if you want, build a realistic network that mimics your own environment and launch a cyber attack on that and see how they behave under duress. That's a tremendous amount of intelligence that we can garner by using that as a screening tool, as well as when you look at the investment of sending your team out for training. For instance, if you were going to go to a New Horizons center for 3, 4, 5 days, that's not necessarily something that you can do consistently throughout the year. You might have a couple of weeks out of the year that you can take these high-paid cyber professionals and put them in training. And there's still a tremendous amount of value in that boot camp training and baselining and really dragging people through content and covering really key concepts in the classroom. But then there's those little short form engagements throughout the year of how do I keep my skills fresh? If a new attack is released in the market, I may not want to wait 8 months for my next chance to go to training to get an update on that. So through your New Horizons network, your New Horizons account reps, you can actually get access to that CyberQ platform, and we can deploy those vulnerabilities live on systems and make sure that they stay connected with cyber professionals throughout the year so they can keep their skills honed. A lot of enterprise companies use this as cyber drills and active competitions, just ways to really hone the skills with their teams. And then obviously moving up into, military and government, the platform itself supports full force-on-force cyber competitions. So if we're looking at red versus blue, and Tim's going to go into this a little bit as we do the team demonstrations, but whether it's a red-only competition, meaning completely offensive, going after exploits and flags, or if we've got a blue element where you've got security operations center and you've got a network defense team installed and red team going after that stuff. This platform is designed to spin all of those environments up automatically and actually record all of the activity as people are competing into that analytics interface we were talking about. From a vendor and creator standpoint, because it's a platform, we allow individuals to come in or enterprises to come in if they have their own content where they want to develop their own targets inside of a range and use the functionality of the platform itself. They can create those types of things and actually sell them out through a marketplace or just use them for internal consumption. So it's a pretty advanced system. It's also got we've designed basically a full operating system for cyber competitions, from team invites to team rosters to the assignments to the actual network build out, design, spin up, game day, all the way back to, leading back to leaderboards and kind of tracking progress throughout that cyber competition. And through all of these different elements, they all contribute to that centralized kind of persistent digital profile for the individual. So everything they do, whether it's in learning, practice, assessment, or competition, is all actually being recorded and contributing back to their digital profile that says you're proficient in the following areas. These are the skills that you've assessed, and this is what it looks like under your profile. So I want to give a little bit of a brief explanation here. This is a super ugly chart. I apologize for that. Tim will give you much better looking Visio diagrams as he explains what's going on. But anytime you see something, this is a very robust platform, and we've got a limited amount of time today. So we're not going to be able to demonstrate all of the features, but I want to give you an idea of what's going on. When you see the demonstration, you're ultimately going to see the first step of this entire slide, which really is the player connecting to a website. It doesn't look super impressive. Once you simplify everything down, you're not going to see really what's being orchestrated in the background. But what that connection actually represents is a web-based connection to an interface to our data center. Once it goes to our data center, that data center actually stores all of the profiles and templates for these cyber range experiences. And as that kind of steps down to this little kind of tree chart here, what that's actually doing is taking a template for a specific exercise, which is being stored cold or cold storage, and we're spinning that up on actual data center resources. So we're giving it RAM, we're giving it virtual CPU, we're spinning it up as a live exercise, live elements, and then all of the machines spin up. Ultimately, this environment that gets provisioned back to the user, anything that can be virtualized can run in this environment, whether it's routers, firewalls, individual operating systems, Windows, Linux, Unix, Android, iOS, Mac, all of those things run in there. And we've got all the predefined targets and vulnerabilities and things that exist within that template. Those things are automatically spun up and torn down for the user through a simple web interface. That all operates through HTML5 without any required downloads. We do have, for more realistic experiences, the ability to VPN directly into the environment once it's spun up. But for all intents and purposes today and for the demo, we're going to be demoing this through the web interface. When that environment spins up, it's actually got scoring metrics that are built into it, where you see that reporting kind of back to an analytics database down here. That's where we pull all of that information out of the cloud environment as it runs, and we store it in a simple format that can be queried later in order to establish benchmarks or see how a user behaved in the cloud environment. These environments, because they're vulnerable, it is a true cyber range. They spin up, they're highly vulnerable while they're up based on all the different things that we've configured into them. And then as soon as the student leaves, we spin the environment back down. So in order to keep those metrics persistent and make sure that we score the user and we can show them progress over time, we have to pull that out into a separate analytics database, which we've standardized over under Yet Analytics that we'll demonstrate here in just a couple of minutes. So with that, just understanding there's so much going on inside of this platform, I like to show this slide that it's really a system of systems, and it's when all of these things work together that it makes something interesting. It's not just a remote connection to a virtual machine. We've got everything from event management to all of the different metrics, whether it's service checks, IDS, time, if they're taking hints, how that influences their score ratio. We've got leaderboards that are built in that are all API enabled that allows you to set up individual localized competitions or even competitions at a national scale. We've got a marketplace where that content can actually be acquired. So as we start growing individual content, it's not just what EC Council can produce, but what the community can produce in there. We've actually got all of the predefined targets, the range itself, how that operates from cloud orchestration, as well as the tech in the background that actually runs this stuff and allows us to do some amazing things with virtualization. So if it's virtualizing, for instance, an industrial control system or SCADA networks or IoT, or your standard VMs, everything from an individual target up to an enterprise, all of those things really orchestrate together and contribute to what CyberQ operates as a platform. So just keep that in mind, because you are going to see a fairly thin slice of what the environment really does. But all of those things are capable in the background, and we'd be happy to dive into more detail as you guys show interest in this platform. But with that, this is the end of PowerPoint, I promise, and we're going to move over to a live demo. So what we're going to demo here is both the single experience as well as team-based experiences. Both have a fairly similar look and feel, but a very different design requirement from how the networks need to be spun up, as well as all the things that you have to consider to run a team versus an individual competition. This is all going to be going on inside of some simulated medical records inside of a real medical database system called OpenEMR. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Tim, and you can take us through the kind of initial spin up for individual exercises, as well as what an individual player sees. And then we're going to see that same process for how we go through on a team spin up, and how that team environment looks with both red and blue interfaces.
Sounds like a plan. All right, which screen am I going to show here? Okay. There we go. Let's try that. Everyone see the console? Steve?
All right. Yep, we've got you on the edit target screen right now.
All right. Okay, so the target is the fundamental basis of where we do everything here. So we're going to start with kind of the building blocks, and then we're going to jump into the interface real quick. So for us, a target is any virtual machine. And so here, this is a list of the virtual machines that are in the environment. You can use ours, you can upload your own, you can actually build your own from complete scratch if you want. So that is a big step forward. One of the big pieces about the platform that Steve mentioned is making sure that everybody that wants to have lots of options and flexibility has lots of options and flexibility. So I'm logged in. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of options. Understand that as an individual user, which we'll see that interface with later, the options get significantly constrained because there's no need for an individual user, for example, to have this much power and control. But what we're going to do here is, as we go through this target profile real quick, I want to point out just some highlights of some information about it. Assigning IP addresses, giving things an industry, and also providing things such as console login and password. One of the problems I've had over the years of doing this is that you look at player documentation, whether it's a lab exercise for a classroom or a multi-day, multi-team environment, player documentation is always done last, printed on site, and usually wrong. Okay, so what we're going to try to do here is collect as much metadata about a target, and then whenever you use that target as a single player single target, as a single player multi-target, and a CTF, and a red versus blue, no matter, it doesn't matter, wherever you use that target, all of this metadata goes with it. Okay, so we're going to use that metadata to present the information that is necessary for each team, red or blue, individual or team, at the appropriate time. All right, and so this is where it all begins. We're going to start adding service scoring. Okay, this is kind of really important for us. One of the things that's frustrating when you start looking at a lot of range environments is they are objective-based assessments, right? You either got the flag or you didn't, and here's your 25 points. That's a really good place to start. It's a terrible place to end. So one of the things we're going to start doing is when we build targets, we want live network services, HTTP, SSH. This is the short list of the services we support now. And we're going to do that. We're going to do lots of things with this information, okay? This is relevant for blue, so they understand what services they need to keep up and running while defending the environment. But we can also use this to generate traffic. We can also use this to provide additional metrics, such as a red player, when you attack or when you attack a flag and capture it, what is your impact on critical services, right? Just because you are good at capturing flags does not mean you should be a pen tester, especially if in the process of capturing flags, you destroy the client's network. So this information, again, enter it once, we're going to use it for lots of different things. And then this is kind of the heart and soul of the target, which is the flags themselves. A flag for us is literally any question that I can ask a player, and in this case, red or blue, any question that I can ask a player that in order to answer it, you have to do something, okay? That's kind of the important part. You have to do something. And I'm going to present this flag, this here, the flag name. What is the version of the web server on? See this flag location. Again, we're going to give you flexibility. If I give the player the IP address, it's going to be pretty easy for them to find it. Or if I give them the host name, then they have to figure out a little bit more level of abstraction. Okay, so just by changing a handful of options, we can make things interesting or difficult. I can rewrite the flag, for example, and be very specific. So if this is a learning flag, I can be incredibly specific, you know, using the -ST switch on Nmap, how many open TCP ports are there on 10.10.1.201? It's all in the art of writing the flag. And then the second part of flag building, right, is this here. It's the course mapping and the job mapping. So whenever we assign a flag to a target, we're going to map that flag inside of a course. That course has one or more modules, and each module has one or more tasks. This is really important because when you start looking at reporting after an event, if you got 35 points and you come back a month later, or you want to use that as part of a resume, for example, the points are meaningless, okay? What you really want to know is, I was asked to do banner grabbing, and did I do it or not, right? But here's the neat thing about a flag. A flag represents two things. It represents something you should have learned in a course, but it also represents something you should be able to do on a job, okay? And this is the NIST mapping. And you can see here, we drill all the way down to the skill level and map to NIST. You can add your own course module tasks, and in future versions, you can actually build your own job frameworks as well. You'll see this mapping for course and NIST come back here in a second. There's a couple places we use it. All right. After flags, there's injects. We'll skip those for now based on time. Documentation. This is kind of fun as well. You know, over the years, as you build a content library, you want the ability to use that content for multiple things. And when you look at the skills journey of an individual, right, it follows a pretty standard path. And that path starts with a learning guide, which is this documentation here. And that's where you're going to give a lot of background reading, right? And this is SQL injection. What is SQL? What is this? What is that? What is this other thing? And we can use this target as a learning opportunity. But then at some point, you need to practice. You need to actually do things. And this is your lab guide. You can create documentation, a lab guide, step 1, step 2, step 3, answer a question. And then eventually, as time goes on, right, as more and more people interact with it, its value begins to diminish. But you can also then write a walkthrough, which is like a lab guide, except it provides the answers. And so here, all of these options that we are mapping into this target, you will see come into play later when we use this target in an experience to determine what is this to be used for. Is this a learning opportunity for somebody? Is this an assessment opportunity for somebody? Or is this a practice opportunity for somebody? Those are three very different things, and they require different sets of metrics and options. But this allows you to build a target once and use it for pretty much anywhere a person is in their educational journey. Last one, CVSS, kind of fun. CVSS, we use the CVE list. All right, so if CVE is the listing of vulnerabilities, oh, let's actually use OpenEMR since that's the target we're going to play with. We'll just come in. All right, so we can come here. So CVE is the industry standard for documenting the existence of a vulnerability. CVSS is the process of documenting the relative difficulty of exploiting that vulnerability. You'll notice we do use generic difficulty ratings, but CVSS is where we actually really begin to drill down into how difficult is it to attack or defend this service on this server. And we can talk more about that if there's questions after that. So this is a target. You can build them, you can use ours, and you build them, you use targets to build experiences. An experience is just one or more targets. I'm going to show you the one we're going to play here in a second. Experiences can be used as individual events, as team-based events, but you can do all kinds of different things with an experience depending again on what you're doing. And so if you remember, we talked earlier about like where the student is on their journey. Is this a learning opportunity? Is this a practice opportunity? Or is this an assessment opportunity? And really what differentiates that, you saw on Steve's slides, this idea of the consequence of failure or the tolerance of failure. So this is where we start setting that up. When you're just learning something, the consequence for failure is very low and the tolerance for failure is very high. So I'm going to give you unlimited attempts to answer all the flags. Right? Unlimited attempts to answer all the questions. If this is a practice opportunity, I'm going to maybe narrow that down to 5 or 3 attempts. And if this is an assessment opportunity, I'm going to give you 1 attempt to answer the flag. This is just one of many settings available on the screen to differentiate where you are in that learning environment, and depending upon what you're going to do with this experience and these targets. Likewise, this option here, displaying target consoles, as a single player, if I check this option, this allows me to play red versus blue at the same time as a single player. So it allows me to see the attacker console and the consoles downstream all at the same time. So this is just setting up what it is we're going to do. Then the next big question is, what targets do we want to play on? Okay, and so you can choose those targets in one of 3 ways. You can see here, I'm choosing targets based on the modules that they support in CEH10. So we're going to do password cracking, we're going to do banner grabbing. This is really useful. So for example, as the content library grows, you don't even need to worry about building your own targets. You can just come in here and go, oh, this is the class I'm teaching. This is the module we just finished. What targets do you have that support practice or assessment inside of this course and module? And you just pick and choose which ones you want. And you can choose those targets by course, you can choose those by NIST-NICE, or you can choose them by industry. You can just make it simple, go, oh, hey, I want a bank, or I want a hospital. And you just choose the targets appropriately. And then everything else just follows on after that. Once you've chosen targets, you can rearrange your flags, you can remove flags, and this builds the entire thing out for you, manages everything for you. You can set up all sorts of different options here, which we can talk about later. Documentation that we looked at earlier, and away you go. Once this is all done, it simply shows up as one of a card. You can see the cards here. This is our test environment, so we have a lot of information in here, but this is what it looks like at the end of the day. And you just simply click it. There's your information. Play now. We'll light it up. So let's take a look. This is what a single player, I believe this one has the event going right now. We're going to hop in, should already be running. So this is a single player event with 2 targets downrange. Notice the entire console is locked. I cannot get in here until I click start. So you click start, there's my flags, right? Notice I did downstream console, so I can actually play as a defender and see my consoles downstream if I needed to. But for now, we're just gonna light up Kali. This is a pretty, everyone's probably seen this. This is just, you know, a virtual machine console inside of a browser. This is all HTML5. And more importantly, there's nothing connecting this Kali box or either of these targets back to my environment. There's no VNC, there's no RDP, there's nothing that if this was a team-based event that would allow someone to ride this connection back to a student and hurt them. It was one of the absolute design requirements of what we were building here. Documentation would be over here on the right. So you can see lab guide sample. There's no real text there because it's just a sample here, but there would be the lab documentation, Control-Alt-Delete, And here's the entire environment for a single player event. This entire event is all built on demand. And as we answer our questions, I'm just going to go through these real quick and submit them, skip a couple. You can see the environment is live. We can open up Firefox and take a look at some things. And I'll save that last flag as Firefox ESR comes up real quick. And away we go. We also have this awesome fun reporting issue thing. If you need to report an issue, you can come in and make notes. And that would open up a ticket back to us. All right. Here we go. So you can come on in and take a look at what's going on downrange. So let's bring that up. So you can see here 201 has HTTP open. And if you wanted to, you could actually come in here and head on over to that IP address. Oh, something's misbehaving right now. Live demos. I'll show you the environment when we do a red versus blue event. Let's go ahead and hop on out of here. And we'll submit that. And we'll go ahead and finish the environment and terminate that. Go ahead and do there and that and submit. And then you can come back in and take a quick look at your reports. You can see there's the flags. I answered none of them correctly. But more importantly, you can actually drill down and there's your course, there's your module, and there's your task. You can see which was actually given to me and whether I skipped them, which would be not completed, or failed them miserably, which is the case here. Again, very useful because as you can see, I did so poorly. I now know which task in which module I need to go back and take a look at to fix where I am deficient. So points, useful. Task mastery, even more useful. Let's go take a look at that same environment from a team perspective. This is a red versus blue environment. Let me show you the network diagram here in a second. Notice it looks very similar because this is the red team player. All right. So we can come back here. You can notice our same targets. Notice their IP addresses have changed though. We were on the 10.10 subnet. We're now in the 192.168.21. So what's really neat about that, this is the environment we're playing with, by the way. So this is my red console. I'm down here on this environment behind a router. We have an entire software-defined network that came up on demand for just this event. Scoring infrastructure is over here on the right. And then this is the blue team. This is who I'm going against, although there's only 2 targets in this example. But what's interesting is that the firewall and the perimeter router for this blue team were automatically configured through no user interaction at all. As part of the management and RSVP of the event, which I'll show you momentarily, we're going to take care of all of this IP address mapping, firewall configuration, network address translation, and software-defined network for you. Nothing that you need to do. You simply pick your targets, choose your teams, and away you go. So you can come here. And there we go. As that loads, again, you can see port 80 is open. Let's get rid of that warning. There is also, should be a database for us to play with. Oops, 200, let's go to PHP myadmin. Yep, and there we go. I typoed something. There we go. So if you come into PHP, you can actually take a look at what's going on. You can see it's a fully populated open EMR database, 5 batches of tables, and you can actually, it's simply faster if I log in with default creds. Oops, I can never type when people are watching. I can't type at all right now. But here's the patients. Here's the patient database. There we go. We have over 4,000 patient records inside the database, all populated, ready to go. We have date of births, we have mailing addresses, driver's license numbers, social security accounts, the whole 9 yards. Everything that you ever want to know about all the patients. This is all fake data, by the way. We don't use live patient data, but it's all in here. And when you take a look at the flags, you can see we're actually going to look for social security number of at least one user inside the environment. So this is all built up again. This is the red interface. I'm going to bounce over and show you blue real quick. And take a look at that. This should be our blue leader. And there's today. It's going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be the opposite side of the network we just saw. And so here's blue. This is where we start populating the information that we did in the target mapping. So you can see here that there's the username and password. This is a Linux headless box, so no GUI. And there's that. And in we are. And so now you can see this is a full system. There's nothing simulated. Lots of open ports. We have open connections and inbound connections. And then here's the services that we are scoring and taking a look at. Again, all of this built on demand, all ready to go. Over here on the left, we have our team chat. So this is kind of very useful. Like we can sit here and communicate with our entire team if necessary, and also exercise control. So we can send messages back and forth if there's a problem with exercise control. We do have blue flags as well. There's our blue flags. And since the event just started, we've only got a little bit of service scores. We've done 16 rounds, but you can see here we're checking, we're pinging, and we're actually digging down into the service itself to see how functional it is, or in this case where we have red lights is not working. So this is our blue console. And then on top of all of that, there is still a third console, which is exercise control. And that is this interface here. And so here we have our chat. I forget which account I messaged from. There we go. Right there. And we can take a look and see what services are running. You can see that HTTP is good across the board. SSH, not so much. If there were injects, they would be down here waiting to be assigned. And then, of course, we can also create snapshots and save state if we need to. So that's a red versus blue event along with exercise control. How we get there is kind of fun, building out a full environment here. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not going to save this. We're just going to come through this real quick, set a start time and a date. Set that. You can set it for the future if you want. If you want to schedule events to take place a year from now, a month from now. We're going to start setting this all up. We're going to give everybody attempts and points, scoring intervals. So what's fascinating here is all of this, if you've ever done a large scale event, we're going to manage this for you. I thought I clicked that. There we go. And it's this part here, which is invitations. So we allow organizations to manage their environment on a 3-tiered system. An org has groups, a group has teams. And then from here, you can set up the roster. So what happens here is as we go through this process, you can actually do multiple teams if you'd like, multiple blue teams, multiple red. You can actually, that experience that we built out, the hospital network, number 5, you can actually choose from the drop down here once it loads. We got a long list here. There we go. There is our hospital hack number 5. And the rest of this at this point is the summary data. So there's your flags and the ability to reorder them. no injects and documents. Once I hit summary, invitations are being emailed out to those team leaders, but rather than keep switching accounts, I'm just going to come in as the exercise coordinator. And you can see here the RSVP screen where each team leader, this would be on their dashboard. You get to choose how many people, what's your roster. Notice this one only gets one because that is only a team of one. So we're not going to give you slots for a team that you don't have. And then you actually can RSVP for specific roles. You can create your own roles. You can use ours. And then once everybody has accepted, this is where all the backend stuff comes into play. And so everybody's RSVP'd, and now we get to design the network. So we're going to assign addresses. We're going to save that. And once, what's nice about this environment right now is, as it stands here, we're not spinning up any VMs yet. This is just RSVP, metadata, and design work. Once I click this button down here, create machine, then we will spin up the entire environment for people to jump in and start playing. So that's all it takes to actually manage, in this case, a 3-team event. Could be a 5-team, 6-team, 10-team. Once we hit create, we're going to spin up a blue network for each one of these teams in much the same way that you see these here like this. All right. That is a really quick demo that will leave us plenty of time for questions.
Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please take a moment to type that in. I know there was a lot covered here in the past 45 minutes between Steve's presentation and Tim's live demo as well. So please take some time there to type in any questions that you may have. Just a quick reminder, if you're interested in any of the material that's presented in this webinar, or if you really just have any questions regarding cybersecurity or what's available to you, please contact your local center for more information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a quick zip code search for the center that's nearest you. Also, like I had mentioned, this is our last week of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We have 2 other great sessions to round out the rest of the month. So if you haven't already, feel free to take a look on our website for what's coming down the pipe on Thursday for our last 2 remaining webinars surrounding cybersecurity. And I know there were quite a few questions in regards to whether or not this session is being recorded. It is being recorded. I will make sure to send this out to everyone who's attending later today. So please be on the lookout for that as well. Just waiting to see if we have any questions that are coming in for you, Tim and Steve. Giving folks a chance to type anything in that they may have. So give it a minute here.
I neglected to show this, by the way.
Well, here you go, by all means.
This is your player profile. So if you remember the course mapping we were looking at before, the course module task, you can see here, this is how far I am for mastering all of the tasks in all of the modules. So I'm 14.29% done with scanning networks and 6.6% done overall in CEH. So kind of a fun part there where you can actually start drilling down into seeing how far you can go. The last thing, I always forget this part, which is the reporting. This is yet analytics. Steve mentioned about APIing our reports and whatnot. One of the big things that we see with a lot of the platforms that are out there is they keep all of their data hostage in proprietary databases. What we're doing is we are rewriting all of that into XAPI, which what that forces us to do is standardize all of our reporting into an active verb object syntax. So you can see here, by normalizing all of our data, it allows us to start doing some pretty amazing reporting based on what you're looking for. Are you looking based on what a person's doing, what is being attacked? And all of it is mapped into human readable JSON. So you can actually get access to this API information and the scoring data all in a simple format, which you can then start building out your own dashboards and reports should you so choose. So there we go. Hopefully I stalled long enough for people to think of some questions if they have them.
Still waiting for a few questions to come on in. Thank you for going over that, Tim. If there's anyone with any questions, Please feel free to type them in. All right, the question that did come in, as Steve mentioned, most are familiar with EC Council with the Ethical Hacker. The question is CyberQ, does it come with a CEH bundle or is it a different course altogether?
All of the above. There is CEH content that we are loading up into the environment that will be available for use.
All right, giving folks another opportunity to just type in some questions here.
I'm going to seed some questions to you, Tim. How about that? So I know one of the questions that we've had frequently after this demo is we see you jumping around between different logins. Yes. There's a design to this platform that I'd like you to explain, which is why do you have to use multiple different logins to show the different types of screens?
That is a great question. Let me log out here real quick and come in as super user to explain that. So there's basically 4 different types of accounts. There is, the first 3 are organizational. So you can see here, EC Council's the org. So we have an org leader account that has 1 batch of permissions. An org can have 1 or more group. So you can see here, there we go. You can see the groups that are inside the org. And then a group can have 1 or more team. So there's a org leader, a group leader, and then once you get all the way down to the team level, there is a team leader. And then by the time you get all the way down to the team, there we go, you have a team player, an individual participant. And so each one of these, this giant menu on the left, since I'm logged in as super admin, this giant menu on the left will get smaller as you go down that list, minimizing and reducing what a person can see and what a person can do. So that way we keep everybody compartmentalized. An org leader can see everything in their org, but they can't see other orgs, right? A group leader can see everything that's in their group, but they can't see other groups or other orgs, right? And then a team leader can see everything in their team, but not other teams or other groups or other orgs. And then an individual on a team, in this case, this person here can only see what's inside their own team. And then there is one last profile, which is a standalone individual, which is not associated with anybody, not associated with an org, a group, nothing at all, just an individual at large. And then, of course, that would have the most restricted view possible. So that's what we do. And the nice thing about the permissions-based is if all of these options are overwhelming, think of it as a kitchen, right? We can create accounts and permissions that are, it's just, frozen menu items, right? You just pick something out of the freezer or microwave it. That would be the consumption model where all you have is your dashboard, right? You would have your dashboard. Your dashboard would have experiences that you could play and your reports, and that's it. We can go from that small of a consumption model all the way up to this massive ability to design, build, and create exams and targets and industries, your own course module task mapping, your own scoring settings, all of that at the high end of the options are all available along that entire spectrum.
Great, Tim. While you were speaking, we did have a couple questions come in. One was, how many teams can join in, I guess, a single exercise or simulation that's happening through CyberQ?
As many as you have. This is all just virtualized hardware. So, I mean, at some point, there is, of course, an upper limit for hardware utilization. But at the end of the day, I mean, on average, the largest events I've ever hosted typically cap out around 10 teams total. National military exercises in the US will cap out around 30 teams with, 31 teams, 32 teams. That would be 30 blue, 1 red, and then, of course, exercise control. So it's just a limit of hardware. That's it.
Awesome. And the other question that came in is if individuals want to try out this simulator, the question really is they must go through CyberQ directly, correct?
Correct. Yeah, CyberQ would be the entrance to all of this yummy goodness.
Awesome, awesome. Steve, I didn't know if you had any other additions you wanted to ask Tim here as we start rounding out here at the top of the hour.
I think with 8 minutes, as we get into the next kind of deeper set of questions, we start getting into some of the more advanced functionality on the back end. But really just understanding, you know, as we navigate a platform like this and figure out, you know, based on the user persona, whether you're trying to learn cybersecurity skills on your own. So if you're an InfoSec professional or a student, or you're running a company where you're trying to gauge a team, there's different approaches to the platform. And quite honestly, you can just work with your local New Horizons Center. And, you know, between the partnership with EC Council and New Horizons, you know, we can set up individual access or team-based access, and, you know, provide demonstrations for how we would spin up, you know, cyber competition or individual events. We do have content that's preloaded. So if you're looking at just consuming, if you just want to go in and learn skills, you know, try, you know, to go in and break down a target. Tim, I think we've got at launch, I think we've got about 300 targets or so. That represent somewhere in the range of about 1,000 flags, 1,000 individual skills that you can analyze. And then what we're going to see, you know, really over the course of the next couple of years, and this is really the direction of this platform and the real purpose behind building the platform. If you look at our path for the next couple of years in CyberQ, we're really just at the start of the journey. But as we start rounding out that content and bringing in studio players, we've got a couple of, you know, really great, well-reputed vendors in the market that already have studio accounts with us. They're going to be contributing content from targets and ways to use their commercial tools. Some of them are pretty expensive tools, and you know, we'll be able to give people kind of a preview of how to use those tools in a fully licensed environment with active Windows boxes and everything else. But as we capture those analytics over time, we're able to start benchmarking, and that's where this really becomes fun. If you take a target that, say, for instance, has been inside of that CyberQ platform for, you know, maybe, you know, a couple of months to a couple of years, if you've had a few thousand people go up against that target, eventually you're going to start to develop metrics around what's the right way to attack that target, what's the right way to defend the target, what's someone who displays a very advanced skill set. So then instead of the old kind of binary, it's right or wrong, or yes, you accomplished this, or no, you didn't accomplish this, you can start looking at benchmarking for people who did this very efficiently with a minimal amount of network traffic, kept all of the network services up and running. How did I compare to that? So maybe out of 5,000 people who have attempted this exercise, you know, your rank is actually 4,885. And you can start to look at what were some of the key things that higher ranking players did inside of that environment that was slightly more skillful than you. So instead of providing a right or wrong kind of binary answer to people, we can start to benchmark them to say, here's how you really measure up, you know, against a cyber professional who's gone up after this, or, you know, what are some things that we can do to help kind of curate that skill, just to provide you a way to get better without it being, you know, just a one-way, this is information we're trying to share to you.
Awesome. We did have one question that came in, Steve. The question was, how is this different from Hack the Box?
That's a great question. Tim, you want to take that one, or you want me to take it?
You can take first crack, and then I'll fill in any missing pieces.
Okay. So I think the biggest difference between us and Hack the Box is probably more on the advanced analytics side, as well as the orchestration. So where Hack the Box is going to give you the ability to spin up, you know, a set of targets, go after those individual boxes, and they're giving metrics on the box as well as walkthroughs once those boxes have been compromised. In our end, we're able to spin up not just an individual box, but we're able to spin up curated templated environments. So as we look at, if I'm going after an individual box, that's great. But when you look at, like, even, you know, a Pro Labs model, where I have an entire enterprise that's been replicated, where I've got multi-layered zones in those networks, all of that stuff is fully curated by CyberQ. So as you're looking at, you know, replicating your own environment, you know, spinning up targets that mimic the organization that you work at, or building, you know, more advanced sets of information, as well as all of the full stack analytics that we pull around it. It's the quality of the analytics that you can pull and the way that we can correlate all of that in aggregate. So if you're, for instance, trained to measure skill development on a team, if I have a team of 100 people that are all in the system, I can start to look at the individual skill ratings and capabilities of the entire team as a whole. What can my team do? As well as what are the individual areas that I need to invest in, with a single person. That all comes from intelligent analytics. It can come from a single box, but most likely the more advanced analytics are going to come from more complex environments. And whether that's a single box target, a multi-target environment where an individual is going after an entire network, or even potentially a team exercise where we've got red versus blue or red only, if it's a Jeopardy style CTF, all of those things are supported in the platform as opposed to that kind of one box approach. Tim, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. So yeah, the different modes of play. So individual versus team versus individual with access to the downstream consoles. The hack the box model is really focused on very narrow puzzle based, which is, again, it's got its purpose, but you're not going to get you're not going to get an EMR record with 4,000 patients in there inside a hack the box. The other big thing, the other big difference is opening up the entire platform and allowing you to design your own targets, your own metrics, your own hierarchy. Everything that I showed here today, plus all the stuff I didn't show, you'll have, if you have the studio access, you have the same rights to all of that power as well, which you will not find in anybody else's platform, Hack the Box or other.
Awesome. Well, I know we are headed to the top of the hour, so we don't have too many other questions that have come in yet. But with that being said, thank you, Steve and Tim. Also, our partners, at EC Council for presenting on behalf of New Horizons today. We appreciate the time. We appreciate the information and this really cool demo that you had given here. Many thanks. Thank you for everyone for joining us as well. We appreciate it. Again, please be on the lookout for the recording later today. It'll be sent out to you. So you can definitely take a look and review and share that with anyone who may have missed our session. With that being said, everyone, please stay safe, take care, and you may now log off. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.